Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm Pastor Roy here at Woodlawn Christian Church, and this devotion I'm recording for Monday, July 18th of 2022. We are working our way through the Gospel of Matthew. We're going to be looking at verses 34 to 40 today, and hopefully this is a section that you're all very familiar with. This is Matthew's version of the Greatest Commandment. This is the one I like to preach from probably the most. Just because it has the last verse of verse 40 that makes it a little more poignant, I think, than Luke and Mark's version. But Luke's version has an important segue right after it. This is a segue to the next thing in Luke, which I think is very important. So let's listen to Matthew's version, and then we'll compare it to the other two synoptics, shall we? Chapter 22, verses 34 to 40 in Matthew. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment, and a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Okay, that's the part, verse 40. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. That's what I like about Matthew's version. It tells us that the rest of the law, the rest of the Bible, we digest it through that lens of loving our neighbor, loving God and loving our neighbor. So if we are interpreting something that violates that lens, then we know that we're not interpreting it correctly. So that is they all hang on this great commandment. This is what the basis. This is the superstructure of those, if you will. Now, in Luke's gospel, I think I mentioned, I like the segue that this creates to the next story in Luke, which is the story of the Good Samaritan. Because here he says, shall love your neighbor as yourself. In Luke's version, he tells us right after that, who is your neighbor? Everyone is your neighbor. So Luke's story is good, is very good. Go back and listen. I should probably, perhaps I'll post it as in the below this the version in Luke when we did Luke's gospel, when we did the devotion over that. Maybe I'll try to look that up and add that to this description. But in Mark's, the lawyer, the Pharisee, comes and when he questions Jesus, Jesus says this and he says, you answered right. So he wasn't really trying to trap him. He got the answer he wanted. Here, though, we see this is again that back and forth between the Pharisees and Sadducees kind of tag teaming on Jesus, trying to trip him up. And here, Jesus does here is he quotes from the Shema, which is a daily prayer based off of Deuteronomy that the Jewish people would have prayed every day, perhaps multiple times a day. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your mind. That's part of the Shema. But then he's tacked onto it a verse from Leviticus 19, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So he's bringing together different layers of scripture there. But he's created this thing that we have to look at. And again, as I said already, and that's the most important part of this, is to remember that this is the hook that we hang all of scripture on. All of the way we digest the Bible is through this verse, the great commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And again, as I already said, if your interpretation of something violates that, then you have to question your interpretation, because Jesus himself has told you that this is the hook that everything hangs off of. All right. And I think I'm going to cut this one just right there because it's short and succinct and it's to the point. Jesus didn't mess around on this one at all. But he brought together two different Old Testament sources and a daily prayer. So he's not creating something new. He's just binding it together and packaging it so we can digest it, to know where to hang our hats, where to hang the law and the scripture and the prophets, rather, the law and the prophets, rather. All right, with that, I'm going to cut you short. It's a Sunday afternoon. Have a blessed day, and please, please, please be a blessing to someone today. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless.